Hey guys, how's it going? I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, here with the LG Encore and the Samsung Solstice 2. Both of these are on AT&T, and they're both basic feature phones with a little bit different functionality. So if you're in the market, you're on AT&T, you're wondering which one should I get, hopefully this dogfight will help you to decide. Now the price range is a little bit different. The Encore is $49.99 on contract, and the Solstice 2 is $29.99 on contract. So that may be a big determining factor, but we're going to do a dogfight and go into more detail. So it's the LG Encore, the Samsung Solstice 2 from AT&T. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com. Let's go check it out. Okay, so on the left side we have the Samsung Solstice 2. On the right side is the LG Encore. Now as far as design, they're both very simple feature phones, so no physical keyboard. The design is somewhat different, but they're pretty much the same size. Both of them are about 4 inches by 2 inches. The Solstice 2 is just slightly taller, 4.9 inches. Compared to 4.17 inches. A lot of numbers. Basically, they're both pretty much the same size. Now they do have a different design. You can see the Solstice 2 has this sort of curved silver edge there that goes all the way around the sides of the phone, whereas the Encore is just basic. It's all black. The back is sort of like a brushed metal. It has a brushed metal design. It's still just plastic, but you can see it's sort of a different color. But other than that, just pretty simple. And then another major design difference is that the Encore, these 3 buttons down here are actually capacitive touch buttons, whereas on the Solstice 2, these are physical buttons. I personally think that the physical buttons are better just because they're obviously more responsive. It's going to work every time you press it. Whereas on the Encore, I had some problems with the responsiveness. Sometimes when I would press it, it would respond, and sometimes it wouldn't, and it just got a little frustrating. There is haptic feedback, so that helps. Going on to the main screen, both have a 3-inch touchscreen display. The Solstice has a capacitive touchscreen, whereas the Encore has a resistive touchscreen. And really, in terms of performance and responsiveness, it's pretty much the same, because even though this has a capacitive touchscreen, it's not the best capacitive touchscreen, so it's sort of, on par with the Encore's resistive touchscreen. And I'll go over to messaging and I'll show you the keyboard. Pretty much the same layout. The quick brown fox jumps. So just quick message there, and there are some errors. And then we'll go over to the Encore and test out the resistive touchscreen. Fox jumps. So you can see also had just a couple of errors. One thing to note, because it is resistive, if you're a girl and you have nails, it's usually easier to type on a resistive touchscreen because you can use your nails sort of as like miniature styli. Whereas on the capacitive touchscreen, you can't do that. I wouldn't really recommend either one for doing heavy texting, just because the keyboard experience really wasn't perfect on either one. Though, some people would disagree with me. Some people would say, I've used it for texting and it's great. So personally, I wouldn't recommend either one for typing, but I did get about the same results whenever typing on both of them. Okay, so we'll take a look at the UI. You can see they're both pretty different. The Solstice 2 uses Samsung's TouchWiz UI, and then the Encore uses LG's custom UI. And I'll give you just a basic overview of both. With TouchWiz, you have 3 blank home screens that you can do whatever you want with, and then you have a widget drawer with several widgets to choose from. These range from anything like games, clock, alarm, calendar, web browser. There's also widgets for Twitter. You can see on this next page, there's a widget for Twitter. There's also a similar widget for Facebook. Just a lot of widget options. And then you do still have the main menu with 3 screens. You can also rearrange these icons. Now, on the Encore, Sort of same design. You do have 3 screens, but each screen has its own designation. You have to use it for that. So on this main screen here that I have it on right now, this is a screen for widgets. You can see it's labeled in the top there. So this is a screen for widgets, and you just press the arrow, and then these are your widget options. As you can see, there are far fewer widget options on the Encore than there are for the Solstice. The Solstice had, you know, several, and then there's even more that you can add to this actual list. And so the Encore has far fewer widget options, but the page does kind of extend. You can see you can scroll down, and you know, I like it. Just obviously I prefer having more options, more widget options like I have on the Solstice 2. And the next page is for shortcuts. You can customize this and rearrange them. It's not quite as free as the widget page on each phone, because these you can move around and have in your own sort of arrangement, but here it's just a basic grid. And then the next page is for your favorite contacts. This page is also scrollable. I believe if you had more contacts, you can scroll down. So it's, you know, kind of the same idea as TouchWiz, but just a little more organized. You know, you still have 3 screens, you still have widgets, and you still have access to the same information that you can get on the Solstice 2, but it's more organized. Each page has a designation, and, you know, everything is just kind of set up differently. And that's just, you know, again, personal opinion. I prefer TouchWiz. I've always liked TouchWiz, but not everyone likes it, you know, and some people have had problems with it. So it just depends on what you prefer. Also, another difference is that on each home page with the Solstice 2, you can have a different background, different wallpaper, whereas on the Encore, it's the same wallpaper for each screen. And then the Encore has, and again, the main menu, and it's in different categories. You can't rearrange these like you can on the Solstice. These are already set, so you can't change that. Also, while we're looking at the screen, I mentioned that they both have a 3-inch touchscreen display. Also, they both have the same resolution. But for some reason on the Encore, I noticed that it has sort of this yellowish tint to it. And I realized that in the background there is yellow on the picture, but that's not what I'm talking about. Even whenever there's white in, you know, any picture, or when I'm doing web browsing, no matter what I look at, there's always sort of this yellowish gold tint to it, and I don't really understand why. I'm not sure if that's just, you know, the device that I have. Maybe there's some imperfection with it, but that did get really annoying. And then the display, you know, on the Solstice 2, obviously it doesn't have that problem, but also it just seems to be brighter. It seems to show colors much better. You know, the Encore, it just seems kind of flat, you know, not as bright. I think the display definitely looks much better on the Solstice 2. Okay, so we'll move on to the camera and turn them over. You can see they both have pretty basic cameras. The Solstice 2 has a 2 megapixel camera. It does not have a flash or autofocus. The Encore does not have flash or autofocus either. It does have a 3 megapixel camera though. And so, you know, performance is going to be pretty much the same, because even though you have a higher megapixel count with the Encore, you know, without a flash and an autofocus, there's really not much else to help out the camera, so it was going to be about the same. So speaking of media, they are a little different. The Encore has a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack, whereas the Solstice does not. It doesn't have a 3.5 or a 2.5. You have the micro USB port, which you could buy a headset that does fit that, but doesn't have an actual headphone jack. Now they both have micro SD card slots underneath the battery cover. There's the Encore slot, and then show you the slot on the Solstice. It's right there. So both of them, you have to take off the battery cover. Both of them do support up to 16 gigabytes of external memory. Neither one of them comes with a micro SD card. So you can see both of the batteries here. The Solstice 2 has a 1000 milliamp hour battery, and the Encore has a 950 milliamp hour battery. Battery performance was about the same on both devices. There's not much difference in the numbers, 950 to 1000 milliamp hour, and so both of them lasted about 3 days with standard to normal use, and then about 5 to 6 days on standby. One thing to take note of though is that some of the widgets on the Solstice 2 do drain the battery. They are going to drain the battery much faster than if you were not to use them. Like the Twitter widget and then the Facebook widget that I showed you. If you have both of these on your main screen, the battery is going to be drained much faster, which is kind of obvious, but it's just something to take note of. You probably won't get as good a battery life if you are to use those on a regular basis. So because both of these are on AT&T's network, you're going to get pretty much the same features. Both of them have access to an app center, AT&T Navigator you can see on both of them. Social Net is also available on both of them. And then you also have access to Mobi TV. And so, those are features you're going to have to pay for data in order to use them, but they do have the same features because they're both on AT&T. So that's pretty much it, guys. The Samsung Solstice 2 against the LG Encore. In a lot of ways, it's up to your own personal preference. I'm just showing you what your options are. You have Samsung's TouchWiz UI versus LG's, more organized, standard UI, a little bit fewer options, but that's going to depend on what you want. I will say the touchscreen was pretty much the same, although the display just, in my opinion, looked better on the Solstice 2 compared to the Encore. Design is a little bit different. It depends on what you prefer, if you think the Solstice 2 is more appealing or the LG Encore. And then camera, again, was about the same performance, even though the numbers were a little different. So that's pretty much it, guys. Solstice 2, Encore, you can decide. Check them both out at your local AT&T store. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. Be sure and check out our Facebook page for a chance to win one of 100 iPads and also a trip to the 2011 Super Bowl. We're going to give away 2 tickets, and we'll also pay for everything, the airfare, the hotel. So check out facebook.com/PhoneDog for more information on that. Also PhoneDog.com for more news, updates, and reviews. You can follow me on Twitter if you like. My screen name is It's My Job to Know. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Sydney from PhoneDog.com, and I'll see you guys later.